Yashodanandana Brajachandranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25 And the last text we heard was after transferring our attachment to the sadhus, then we lose our attraction for the material modes of nature, or for acting in material consciousness, and then we can actually see Krishna in this very life. So let me find the verse today. Please pardon me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Pardon me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text 27. Oh, text 28. Devahuti vacha kachit tai uchita bhakti kidrishi mama gochara yaya padam te nirvanam anjasa anvashnavai aham Devahutirvacha Kachit tvayuchita bhakti Kidrishi mama gochara Yaya padam te nirvanam Anjasan bhashnava aham Devahutirvacha Kachit tvayuchita bhakti Kidrishi mama gochara Yaya padam te nirvanam Anjasan bhashnava aham Devahutirvacha
Chitvayuchita bhakti Kidrishi mama gochara Yaya param ta nirvanam Aham Tiger Maharaj. Devahutirvacha
Kachit tvayuchita bhakti Kidrishi mama gochara Yaya padam te nirvanam Anjasan Vaishnava aham
Devahutirvacha
Devahutirvacha
Kachit tvayuchita bhakti
Kachit tvayuchita bhakti
Kidrishi mama gochara
Kidrishi mama gochara
Yaya param te nirvanam
Yaya padam te nirvanam
Anjasan Vaishnava aham
Anjasan Vaishnava aham
We're ready.
1 second, Prabhu. Actually, we've already disconnected things up here, so sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. Online, please chant.
देवुतिरुवाच
Devahutirvacha
काचित् त्वयोचिता भक्तिः
Kachit tvayuchita bhakti
कीदृशी मम गोचरा
Kidrishi mama gochara
यया पदं ते निर्वाणम्
Yaya param te nirvanam
अञ्जसान् वशनावहम्
Anjasan Vaishnava aham
देवहूतिरुवाच
Devahutirvacha
काचित्त्वयुचिता भक्तिः
Kachit tvayuchita bhakti
कीदृशी मम गोचरा
Kidrishi mama gochara
यया परं च निर्वाणम्
Yaya param te nirvanam
अञ्जसन् वैष्णवा अहम्
Anjasan Vaishnava aham
Devahutirvacha
Devahutirvacha Kachit
Tvayi unto you Uchita proper Bhakti devotional service Kidrishi What kind? Mama, by me. Gochara, fit to be practiced. Yaya, by which. Padam, feet. Te, your. Nirvanam, liberation. Anjasa, immediately. Anvashnavai, shall attain. Aham, I. Translation. On hearing this statement of the Lord, Devahuti inquired, what kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet? Purport. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that no one is barred from rendering service to the Lord, whether one is a woman or a laborer or a merchant. If he engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, he is promoted to the highest perfectional state and goes back home, back to Godhead. The devotional service most suitable for different types of devotees is determined and fixed by the mercy of the spiritual master. So, if anybody would like to add to the discussion today, please do feel free to raise your hand and we can collaborate on this. So, I begin by offering my humble respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all the assembled devotees. So, Lord Kapila Deva has been explaining the process of devotional service to Devahuti, and now she, being a perfect student of the spiritual science, is asking how to make it practical. Okay, you talked to me about these topics. Now, what do I do now? I want what you have told me is attainable by the process of devotional service, which is to attain the service of your lotus feet. So what's amazing about devotional service is she's asking, what kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet? What service do I do so I get more service? Right? So this is how you can understand the quality of the disciple. Is they want to know what they can do to please the spiritual master so they get the blessing of more service to the spiritual master. Right? Or in the case of Kapila Deva is himself the Supreme Lord. So of course, we understand that the spiritual master distributes the process of devotional service, which is just applicable to his disciples. And Srila Prabhupada, being the founder Acharya, the preeminent Shiksha Guru for ISKCON, and for the entire world for the next 10,000 years, has actually distributed to us the process of devotional service, which we practice in all the ISKCON temples around the world. And it's a sadhana program which is 4 hours, ideally 4 hours straight of hearing and chanting the transcendental vibration of the Lord's glories, the Lord's name, and absorbing ourselves in the form of the Lord in the temple, worshiping the Lord's devotees in the form of Tulsi Maharani and the spiritual master. And that's a 4 hours jam-packed. And then there's also, there's also an evening program and Gita class in the evening time. And you can also add in an hour sometime during the day, and you can study additionally Prabhupada's books. Of course, Prabhupada did recommend you can read these books 24 hours a day. And but at the same time, then there's other descriptions or prescriptions from Srila Prabhupada where he actually would say, okay, you do your classes in the morning and evening with the devotees, and you hear and chant the glories of the Lord and go deep into the subject matter, right, by discussion, right? Try to understand what is being spoken in these books. And then the rest of the time you go and preach. And Prabhupada was describing in the Lilamrita yesterday how we need to work. And what is this working? This working isn't like the karmis. We're not interested really, in our pure consciousness to work like the karmis. We're interested to do something for Krishna. So then even our devotees who work, they look like they're working for the karmis. They're being trained by the spiritual master to not work for the karmis at all, but work for Krishna. And we may, in our beginning stages of Varnashram Dharma society, there's karmis who are giving money to us. But ideally we have Daivi Varnashram Dharma, and there's devotees who have an inclination to accumulate wealth or to procure funds for Krishna's service. They perform that activity for Krishna's pleasure in consciousness, and they chant the Lord's name while they work, and they hear the Lord's glories while they work, but then also they actually are associating with devotees. That's actually a higher occupation than working for these karmis, who will be disturbed if we're listening to kirtan while we do our business. They'll be disturbed if we bring in prasadam for everybody. They'll be disturbed if we don't want to eat their stupid food, which is going to send me to hell. I have one friend, and he was saying, Prabhu, you should give me your advice on how I can tell these people at work that I don't want to eat their food. They keep trying to fix me when I try to talk to them about it. What a drag. Of course, the devotee sees, here's an opportunity to actually preach. But if he has to be careful to preach them the absolute truth because they are paying his paycheck, now you see satsanga. Now you see. Because they have transcendental knowledge. Right? And they're actually performing their work in relation to Krishna, and they're thinking of Krishna while they work, and they're also giving some of the fruits to Krishna, and they're maintaining a household where Krishna is in the center. So that work, even now, even while we associate with karmas, is not the same. Like the karmas are doing anything. So but the spiritual master is actually, he knows which devotee should enter into that path of devotional service and become purified through that process. And he knows which devotee shall stay and remain a brahmachari under strict orders. On call, so to speak. A brahmachari is supposed to be on call. Right? And when we work in the business world, some of us remain on call. Also, there's some businesses that work that way too. But generally, there's a time when you say, okay, boss, I'm on call these times, but I'm not on call during this time. This is my time. So the brahmachari doesn't have it on like that. And actually, no disciple has a time when he's not on call. But the concept is the brahmachari, whatever prescriptions are given by the spiritual master for his lifestyle, for the disciples' lifestyle and things, the whole idea is he's moving towards to be in the consciousness like Devahuti. What can I do? How may I be of service? At 24 hours a day, right? every day without fail, and rising early and attending Mongol Arti, bathing early. Prabhupada mentioned these things. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in association with devotees, he stressed this, right? And he actually wrote a letter where he said all initiated disciples must attend morning and evening classes. They have to chant their rounds, of course. They should avoid the offenses and so many other things. They cannot eat food cooked by non-devotees. You know, they cannot eat food cooked by non-devotees. He wrote it in his own hand and he signed it. So this means he set the bar for his disciples in this institution very, very high. And what does that do? That means we get purified very, very fast. So we're very, very lucky that we have such an amazing devotee as Srila Prabhupada to guide us back to Godhead. And he is trying to pull us back one way or another. And simply by pleasing him, right, then Krishna is pleased. Simply by pleasing Srila Prabhupada, then Krishna is pleased. Of course, those of us that are not direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada, or even of those of us who are direct disciples of Prabhupada, his pleasing Prabhupada is not just to ignore everybody else also. Prabhupada was not like that. You know, Prabhupada wanted the devotees to get along with each other nicely, and they wanted to have a mutual attitude of service, a Vaikuntha atmosphere, right? You know, where he's my Prabhu, this is my Prabhu, I have to serve him, I should please him, right? I should, and you know, the Prabhupada made statements about the authority structure within ISKCON. Now, he also warned against bureaucracy, which is where, you know, things can get off sometimes, right? When there's not this this environment of sadhusanga where we are honestly, we get to brainstorm together, we get to bring things to the table, they should be considered and taken seriously, right? And we also do so with respect. And somebody may have an amazing idea, right? And if just because it's not on my list, then, you know, that person can't do it. On another side, there's also do the needful, right? Where we're trying to run this, you know, this little ship of, you know, of the temple or the you know, the sadhu sangha, and it's a fragile situation, right? Everybody is kind of pushing to the max, and if we miss some particular services, then it does have an effect on others. So then, it's amazing that this is the prescription. Prabhupada says, you know, Prabhupada wants us to stay in ISKCON. That means we're going to get purified. You know, that means it's going to be difficult to do that because working with other people is not easy with a respectful attitude. And also, churning and breaking our minds for the preaching mission. So, there's the basic sadhana, right, which is every devotee's, you know, lifeblood. Then there's association with devotees in ISKCON and cooperating to push on the preaching mission, right? So everybody has their own little genius. So nobody's genius is meant to be squashed or smashed or, you know, ignored. But at the same time, then there's the doing the needful because, you know, we just don't have the capacity. And actually, Prabhupada, there's no lack of amazingly huge ideas for spreading this movement, you know, but our capacity can only so much. Right? And as we really become more and more prayerful and surrendered to the Supreme Lord, and depending on His will, then, you know, He may give us more capacity. So actually, that's our desire, is we want more capacity to serve Prabhupada. Right? We want more capacity to serve ISKCON. We want more capacity to serve Prabhupada's representatives. We want more capacity to collect, recruit, and train, to meet, recruit, and train Prabhupada's wayward associates. You know? Prabhupada has so many associates. You know? So many associates are floating out there, and they're just waiting to meet us. And Prabhupada described it. He also said one time, he said, you recruit these young boys and girls, and you train them up. And as soon as they are sufficiently trained up, you send them out to make a new temple. Wow. Something here, something going on. You know? So, there's a lot of adventure to be had in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada is providing so many processes for us to be the service which is most suitable. So the devotional service most suitable for different types of devotees is determined and fixed by the mercy of the spiritual master. So a certain devotee, he should remain in the temple. So there's references like Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit wanted to travel with Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, no, you stay in the temple and worship the deity. So he had his Prabhu Datta Dev. Prabhu Datta Dev is a term which refers to one's place of service. In one sense, ISKCON is our Prabhu Datta Dev. Right? But in another way, according to our spiritual authorities and managerial authorities, that we have Prabhu Datta Dev, which means we have our particular places of service, and then we have our particular services there also. And it's not like a fixed thing, like just take it and don't talk back or whatever. Sometimes, if we have a really bad attitude, then we may get that back from our authorities. You know? We may get that attitude back. Why? Because they're actually being empowered by Krishna to correct that attitude of that person. You know? So we may be in an improper attitude with one of our spiritual authorities, but we may be talking something reasonable. I was speaking about this with Bhakti Caleb earlier today, and it's really amazing. If we meet with the spiritual master or our spiritual authorities, and we're actually talking about something reasonable, right? But we don't have the proper attitude, then they may not respond very well to that. Of course, in ISKCON or in our devotional service, we may be asked to work with devotees who are themselves not completely purified and are going through purification themselves. And so this is why it makes ISKCON so amazing, is because it's going to work. If we continue our sadhana every single day, then Krishna will be present in our lives, and he will make the arrangements, even if there's some grinding and bumping between devotees who are trying to preach. And so these are some ideas from me. I thought that maybe I'd go on to some to the other verses, but we can save those. They're longer purports, which are very nice. And Prabhupada mentions here that anybody can perform devotional service. Bhakti Yoga is the yoga for you and me. You know, Bhakti Yoga is the yoga for you and me in this Kali Yuga. Actually, at all times and all places. Actually, yoga means bhakti. If we don't have bhakti, it's not yoga. That's why, actually, Caleb and I were discussing also this morning that the third and fifth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita are many times referred to as karma yoga. Even Prabhupada wrote karma yoga. But in that chapter and in those translations, he's referring to the process of service to Krishna. But actually, there is no karma yoga without bhakti. There is no yoga without bhakti. Yoga means bhakti. That's the only thing. Yoga means union with Krishna. So actually the yoga ladder means that it's connected with bhakti, but it's a preliminary step. And in the highest rung of devotional service is pure bhakti yoga, right? That means yoga, right? So everything is yoga as long as it's actually connected with service to the Supreme Lord. So actually Prabhupada understands what Krishna means, and he makes sure that we understand also, even though other persons translate the Gita in other ways. So, yes, this verse, Papayonayaha, even those born of sinful wombs, can perform devotional service. So Prabhupada writes here, whether one is a woman, or a neighbor, or a merchant, if he engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, is promoted to the highest professional state, and goes back home, back to Godhead. So we're very, very fortunate to be connected with this Guru Parampara, and we can rest assured that if we approach with a submissive attitude, then they will give us service, and that service will be fully perfect and complete and ready. I will have full facility to go back home, back to Godhead. And Prabhupada has even discussed that if we are following some spiritual authorities or managerial authorities as best we can with a proper service attitude towards Krishna, then even if those persons are contaminated or falling down or having issues, then we make our credit. Because we're doing so in Krishna's system for the pleasure of Krishna. So we don't have to worry. That there's no loss in this. There's never any loss. So the mercy of the spiritual master is that this is a place in which Prabhupada made a house in which the whole world can live, right? But if we're bickering too much, then we may be asked to do, some service in a particular part of the house, where we don't bump heads with others. But if we really, really want to be moving fast, then we just have to be humble. And really that's the only thing that's required, is if we're really humble and we actually think, every devotee is my Prabhu. Means actually they have things to teach me spiritually. I have my managers who I listen to in terms of what I'm going to do, and I don't have no input with them, right? I can mention some things in a humble way. I may have to repeat myself, right? But at the same time, everybody in this movement is my Prabhu. I can actually learn how to serve Krishna properly from all these devotees. And if we just have that mood, then this whole place will become like Vaikuntha. And any place that devotees go will become like Vaikuntha. And as soon as we make a new place, then somebody else will enter into that place, and they will think, my gosh, I'm in the spiritual world. And then guess what? What do you do in the spiritual world? You get some service. And the devotees will say, my dear Prabhu, thank you so much for being here. Your association is incredibly enlightening. We think that maybe you can do these services and these services and these services. Right? Of course, the first thing that we tell people is to take the services that Prabhupada gave for everybody, which is to chant our rounds free of offenses, to work on that every day, to wake up early, come to the temple, eat only prasada, and such, the basics. Right? So we start people with the basics, but then it grows from there. Prabhupada wrote a lot. So, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Would anybody like to add something? Okay. So let's see. Anybody online? The other day we missed them. So let's talk about some devotees. So Arjuna was given the service to fight, right? So he was given the service to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. And his relationship with Krishna is in the mood of a friend, but he had that service to do. And the idea that Krishna said, you think of me, and at the same time you perform your duty, right? And And so then some other devotee like Shukadeva Goswami, right? His service was to preach. Now, in this ISKCON movement, actually all of us are meant to preach. And this is actually really, really, really important, that the preaching in collaboration, practically for the purpose of this discussion, it's not like complete, like there's nothing more. But I'd like to focus on three things, three services that Prabhupada has given for us, is to do our personal sadhana with intensity and sincerity. It's strict, serious, and sincere. The idea is that if we're not strict with ourselves, right, then we may need others to be strict with us. And that's actually good for us, not bad for us. It doesn't feel good for the false ego that somebody else is having to keep me on my game, right? But it'll be good for us. But the idea is if we can be strict with ourselves, our own personal sadhana, then we will show Krishna that, we take him very seriously. And to be serious about Krishna consciousness, means we're really serious to actually get the goal of devotional service. It means we really want to serve Krishna. Or rather, we're really serious to use this life to serve Krishna. So serious, there's ways we can actually break down these words and analyze a little bit. Then there's sincere. Sincere means that there's no sincere, means without wax. It's actually a word which means like a marble sculpture has usually cracks in it because it's a natural stone. And when you fill the cracks with wax, right, then you can kind of gloss over the imperfections. But if you have, but it's not actually pure, right? But a pure marble, sincere, without any cracks, without any wax, without any duplicity. It means we serve Krishna simply for the purpose of serving Krishna. Because we want to bring pleasure to Krishna in any and all circumstances. And so the idea is if we do that, and then we cooperate nicely with the devotees, who are also doing that, and who are also trying to push on this movement and share this movement with others. Right? So these two things, my personal sadhana and my practice of sharing the holy name and the glories of the Lord. That's also a type of a sadhana, actually, for us. Right? It's not like I'm pure just because I share about Krishna. I'm getting purified because I share about Krishna. Does anybody else feel that way? That we get purified by stepping out and saying, my dear sir, please chant Hare Krishna. Right? So this is actually, these are our two sadhanas. And actually, the higher sadhana is to do the preaching. But it's not possible, it'll become completely hackneyed. It'll become completely bogus, actually. And there'll be no spiritual strength. Nobody's heart will be purified by our preaching if we're not practicing properly. Right? And there was one letter where Prabhupada wrote that there was one devotee who was going to preach, and Prabhupada wrote about that devotee to another devotee and said, actually his preaching has no meaning because he's disobeyed me in a severe way, and his preaching will have no effect. So he can do so many programs and there will be no result from that, favorable result. So this is why we do those things, and then we work together to bring more and more people into the fold of serious practice and serious preaching. And so then it makes three things. Cooperation with the devotees in ISKCON, right, who are practicing sincerely and spending all their time and energy to preach as much as possible. And we ourselves are practicing very sincerely and making sacrifices for preaching, and then we're just trying to get along with each other, which is the third one. Right? So that's kind of the service package that Prabhupada has given us. one point of view. There's a way in which you can look at ISKCON, or you can look at our service in such a way. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to some of the devotees.